everybody, I am at a Rocky River Park here in Cleveland, Ohio, and I am going to paint a river scene. So I'm excited to get going on this. I bought a larger canvas to work on today. It's a 20-inch by 12-inch, and it's linen, and it looks like it's unprimed, but it has a clear coat of gesso. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with it. I'm going a little bit bigger, and I think it should be fun. So I'm gonna get set up and we'll get going. Well, I walked all around and I settled on this view looking this way. I liked how the trees sort of canopied over the river further back, so I'm going to play with some of that. And I loved also how the values just really receded in the distance and there was more contrast up close. So I'm going to focus on that. So, all right, so I'm going to get set up here and we will jump in. Okay, now sometimes before I get going on a larger painting, I might do a smaller color study. So what I'm going to do here is I've got my palette. I brought my small portable one today because this easel is James Coulter, and I like it for my bigger canvases because I can stretch it further. So my palette is down below, and I know that you like to see what I'm doing with my mixing, and I like to explain what I'm doing. So I bring my portable one for camera. So here we go. So I have a small little 6x8, just a little panel right here. And I'm going to do a little bit of a color study on this. I've done my thumbnail sketch, and this is what I've come up with for my sketch. So my focus here is going to be on using values to create distance. And this is kind of a mundane sort of blah background, but I'm going to pull out some of the value contrasts. More on the banks and up close, there's some nice sharp contrast there. And then the further away, I'm going to kind of push that value a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to pull out some spring greens that I see trying to emerge over here. All right, so I'm going to use this sketch as my reference for composition on here. Just a quick sketch. A little bit of thinner, and we're off to the races. A little bit of dark color. Brown. It's dark. So if I just think in terms of mass, into my sketch. Now my view might look a little bit different on here than what you see over there. And it's just because it's impossible to get the camera in exactly the right angle. All just middle tone gray. So like I said, this large canvas behind me, I'm starting with just sort of this linen color already. There's a clear coat of gesso on it, and I'm just playing with it. It's a little bit different. I've never used these before, so I'm gonna have some fun with it and see what happens. I like to experiment every now and then and just jump off. It's really just to help me isolate the major values and where I'm going to go with this. This is sort of like doing a thumbnail sketch with color and value. Just going to take a little bit of cad yellow, a little green. Oh yeah, and for colors today I have titanium white, cad yellow medium, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and the smallest amount of phthalo green and alizarin crimson. I probably won't be using those very much at all. So I just want to pop in some of these bright passages of color to create that illusion, to get the idea of how my canvas is going to end up looking when I'm done. You can even take a little phthalo green into that yellow if you want that. Really hit that up closer. But I'll add a little white as it goes off into the distance, just to cool it down, this back in the shadows in here. And then way back there, I've got a little more yellow ochre, burnt sienna, a little bit of white. Just to give myself some color notes of where I'm going to go with these spring colors that I see. Some of that's in the water. The water does have a little bit more olive green color in it, so I do that with yellow ochre, ultramarine blue. So just hitting some of those color notes like that. So let's jump in on the bigger canvas now. Kind of sort of mundane colors today, but what I like about it is that there are some strong contrasts up close. So I'm gonna pull out some more of those stronger contrasts of the bank, and then pull in some of these spring greens you see over there across the way. And then I'm gonna also sort of create a tunnel. I might try something a little bit bigger. Normally I do really small canvases when I plein air, for the whole reason of efficiency. Getting out there and painting, you have limited amount of time with the sky and the lighting changing. So I work small and get it done so that the light doesn't change as much. But it's kind of overcast today and the light pretty much stays the same when it's overcast. And I had this big canvas and I thought, why not? Let's try it. To me, it's big. It's 20 inches across, not 7 feet, but you know, baby steps, right? So anyway, this is, it's a linen canvas, and it is gessoed clear. And so I thought, I've never done this before, so you know, why not just try something new? Putting that aside, and I'm gonna put my drawing down below. Now today for my easel, normally I use the Open Box M, but since I am working on a larger canvas, this works better to me on a James Coulter easel, Art Box and Panel. So this has a longer attachment up here, and I really like that. And then down below is my palette mixing area. Now, for doing these videos, it makes it really difficult to mix down here, and you guys can't see what I'm doing. So I brought along one of my little tiny palettes. Oh, and there go all my paper towels. I have one of my palettes here so that you can see what I'm doing as I'm mixing. And then just on this palette surface down below, I set my brushes and my odorless mineral spirits and my coffee tea. So, okay, so here's one of my little palettes, and today I'm just using my standard palette. Not a whole lot of color out here today. Titanium white, cad yellow medium, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and tiny bit of phthalo green and a tiny bit of alizarin crimson. You can use alizarin permanent, it's all the same price, everything. People like alizarin permanent better though because of the light fast quality, so I don't know why I don't just always grab that, but anyway, so there it is. So for brushes, I'm probably just going to use 2468. I've got a handful of them down below on my palette box, and I may even break out a couple of palette knives and see what I can put together with that. All right, so I have my sketch. I'm going to refer to that, and my paper towels. What I'm doing here now is just straightening this. Again, 12 by 20, and it's already a linen color, so I'm not going to tone it. So I'm just going to jump in with a smaller brush. What is it? Well, I guess that's a 6. It's not that small. I'm going to use a little bit of thinner. And I'm going to use my sketch that I did. I'll just set it down here. You won't be able to see it. It's down here. and then I'm gonna draw on my sketch. So I hope that you can see. I won't be able to get at your questions, but please leave them and I'll try to get at them when I'm done. And we'll go from there. All right, so based off my sketch, I really wanted to pull in more of this bank over here. So I'm gonna be talking a little bit less as I concentrate, but I do think the most important part of plein air painting is the beginning and isolating your composition and pulling out these big shapes. That's the hardest part, I think. Getting in all the other finesse and the lighting and the values, colors, you can get all that, but if you don't get the composition in at the beginning, the rest is just, you're gonna be tickling up a difficult canvas. So I like the juxtaposition of this mass with a larger, more thinner mass over the, I said larger and thinner, if that makes sense. Over here it's longer and juts out that way. So we're gonna work that a little more like this. And I want the widening of this river to be really like that. And I like the rocks here. I just don't want it too close to the edge of the canvas because that creates a feeling of tension. And so I'm gonna move it up just a little bit, maybe make it a little bit smaller than it is in real life. And work out the bank here. Have it that way because if I lifted it up any more, I'd be blocking the scene that I want to paint. I could move it off to the side, but I like to have the smallest gap from palette to canvas to scene. And I do this in my studio too. There's a really important triangle that the further your eye has to travel, the more chance your brain has to forget what you're seeing. So even in your studio, set your still life or your photo reference or whatever right next to what you're doing. Keep your palette and everything in this close proximity. So again, getting back to the drawing of this in reference to my thumbnail sketch. Again, I'm at the beginning here, I'm figuring out placement, not quite into the values yet. There's this tree that is going like this that I really like. I don't know that, yeah, you can't see it, I don't think. Go like that. I also like how the top of this bank comes down like this and there's spring green grass, and so I'll pull in more of that as I'm going along because that's going to really help draw the viewer in this way. This is all scratchy stuff along the bank, darker value. Again, everything to help pull the viewer this way and push the scene back that way. And then we've got some values back here. There's a huge cliff back here, but I'm not going to really focus a whole lot of time on that. I may end up doing that later at a different time, but for now I just want to represent it by a value. And I've got these trees here sort of forming this activity in there. And the banks over here come down like this. And then way over here, there's a, I don't think you can see, but way off to the side over here, there's a beautiful dark tree. And it's kind of coming up and around and does this gnarly little thing like this that I want to make sure is in the scene. All right, so then I'm going to play with the water in here and the reflections, the values. All right, so that kind of maps out where I'm going with this. What I'm going to do now is just lay my brush on the side, use a little bit of thinner, and map in. My canvas is already a middle tone color value, so I'm going to do a little bit more in areas where I think it needs a little bit darker value than what is represented by the linen. As I squint down, I see that this mass of value compared to the value behind it is just a step darker. So leaving the linen pretty much as it is back here, I'm going to just darken this a little bit. Okay, so I like where that's going. A little bit darker value down here in the water than the linen. so far, I mean, I've pretty much been using the stain that's on my brush, and I'm connecting both halves of the river by allowing the value to touch this side of the bank too. Gives a sense of unity. I don't want it to be like this is interesting and this is interesting. And then I've always said it's like a compositional problem where you have two items of interest and they're not connected. It's like a donkey between two haystacks and it can't decide which one to eat, so it starves to death in the middle. So connect them, keep them both interesting and together. Just a little bit more back here. I want that bluer, not more sienna. So taking a very thin mixture. Okay, so we're getting that connection across the river this way. And then the top of this bank is connected to the background. It just has this really nice fluid motion. Okay, now I really want to hit some of these darks a little bit more intensely so we get that contrast. Take your time. There's nothing that says you need to hurry when you're out painting or in your yard or wherever you're doing this. I know I'm always harping about efficiency because the lighting changes and everything, but you can always come back the next day too if it's changed too much for you. And my art teacher always used to say, the only thing speed will do is make you throw your painting away faster. No point in rushing. All right, so kind of like where that's going. I don't think it needs a whole lot more information because I'll be able to paint in the information that's going to go over there. And then over here there are a few darker pops where the mass of land comes down to the water. So we'll just suggest some of those in. I hope that you can still see. Yeah, okay, good. I've kind of lost our neat tree over here, but I'll bring it back. Okay, oh, we're seeing some beautiful color from the sun. I'm so happy to have that out. And I'm happy to have you with today. This is really fun. I feel like it's just like how it used to be back when I was on more often, and I felt like we were hanging out together more, and that was more fun. Life gets so busy, you know. And so here we are, you know. Who knew life would take all these different turns and twists, and it's crazy. It's really unfortunate, very sad too. So many people are hurting. You're in my prayers, and I hope that this is all over very soon. All right, so I just took a little bit of yellow ochre into that same mixture that I had here, and just massing this in where I see it in the water, squinting down at this, and by adding just the slightest touch of yellow ochre, it gives it that sort of that watery gray-green appearance back in there. And I'll be adding a lot more paint and interest to that as I go along. Okay, so that, I'm happy with the beginning stages of this. One thing I don't have on here yet is any highlights, or any of the highlights. And so I will get those in place here pretty soon. but I think it's starting to feel like water and land, and you can kind of start to see where it's all gonna go. And I think it's echoing some of the things that I was already seeing in my thumbnail sketch. Now I'm just gonna take some white, maybe a little bit of blue, because I'm not seeing white, white, white. Just the slightest hint of that. And all I'm gonna do with this is just map out some of these more intense places of highlight. I see it much more up close. And again, this is really just, the whole thing about this painting was to pull the viewer this way using contrast and connect it to these other pieces of land, and then just with value push the viewer way back. And so this back here is much lighter. And that's how you can also know when you're done with the painting, is did you arrive at the things that you really wanted to say? Did you reach that place? And if you did, then just stop. Remember, a plein air painting is a study. It's not intended to be a fully done, polished painting. You're out here studying, it's field work. And the better you get at this, the better you get at painting in general. Whether you paint portraits or still lifes, because you learn to be efficient and think quickly on your feet. And that's really a prime ingredient for just making you a better artist, learning to have that visual memory and getting the colors and values accurate, capturing sunlight. So yeah, so practice, practice, practice. It doesn't matter what you're painting. Behind me is this massive tree root, and it looks so cool, but I couldn't paint it today. But someday, you know, I mean, the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're painting a tree root or a mountain scene or a river or whatever. Put something in there that strikes you as beautiful, and make the painting about that and only that. You don't need 47 things calling for your attention. Just keep it clean and simple, clean voice. Okay, so that's starting to feel a little bit like water, and I'm happy where this is going. So now I'm going to start applying the paint. And I don't feel compelled to cover the whole canvas in paint, even though I did choose to paint on a very large one. I sort of like some of that linen showing through, so I'm going to focus on the background and work my way to the foreground. But, as in the case right now, when the light comes out, I may just pop in some of this bright green so that I can see kind of where I'm going. Maybe I'll just do that right now. A little bit of cad yellow, a little bit of that phthalo green. I can see that over there. Look at that bright. Woo! Now the whole canvas is singing. Get a little bit of blue in there to tone it down a little. Back in here, more in the shadows. And I want to put some over here so I can get that action going too. A little bit of white too will get that feeling like it's supposed to. And I can see some of this color in through here when the light hits it. So I really want to capture that, vibrant energy right now. I don't like that. That's a little too phthalo green. So, oh, good. Rubbing it out helped. Maybe tone it down with a little yellow ochre. That first green of spring always reminds me of Robert Frost's poem, "Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Each new leaf's a flower, but only so an hour." Oh gosh, how does the rest go? As dawn goes down today, I don't know, whole middle part. Okay, so going in the background here a little bit more, there's some yellow ochre and burnt sienna back in here. Just enough to provide a little bit of warmth, little trees doing a little something, a little bit of spring green peeking through there. This is a huge cliff wall, so again, just keeping that value quiet. I don't need all of these paper towels, just take a few. White, burnt sienna. And just paint your colors together. hope you can see. Okay, you can. And I'm squinting down at that background, that cliff wall. And again, I don't want to make this all about that, so I want to keep it quiet. Down here in a little lid on my palette area down here is a little bit of linseed oil. I don't even have it on my palette because I hardly ever use it. It's so seldom. So you don't need very much of it. The light is hitting this right here. And then you can alter your brush strokes to make it look like it's more vertical as the light. When you have a roof line like this, which in this case that cliff wall levels out so the sun is hitting it more direct, but the more vertical it gets, the darker the value because it's not getting as much light. It's the same with the tree, and I brought up the roof line because the same thing happens with a roof of a house. Toward the point of the roof, it's darker because not as much sunlight is getting it as opposed to the flatter surface down below. Until the sun decides to shift around and now the whole thing is bathed in sunlight. All the joys of plein air. But I love the challenge, and I hope that you do too. I hope you enjoy just wrestling the bull by the horns. A little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of white. I just want to show a little bit of the sun coming through back there. Nothing that's going to be too distracting. I don't want to tell the viewer, hey, go see what's going on back here. But I do want to make it interesting enough so that the viewer is rewarded by coming up and looking at your painting. We're always cognizant of the viewer because ultimately that's who you're doing this painting for, whether it's you or anybody else. It's like a musician writing music or whatever. That's the same concept. So speaking of concept, I wanted to address what it is I really want to say about this scene, and I said that at the beginning, but I'll say it again in case you missed it. It's sort of a colorless scene, and so I really wanted to take the opportunity to push the values, contrasts more. Stronger contrasts in front, less in back. Near is more, further away is less. And so I'm using that with contrast and color. So that is what this is all about today. So up in here, back where the cliff is kind of behind this island mass, I'm just keeping it grayer, duller, less interesting. And remember too, I'm not worried about covering the whole canvas. Just to suggest. Maybe I'll just take one little patch here of sunspot. White, yellow. What if I did cad yellow? What if, right? I always say, what if? I mean, really, if you think about in your painting adventures, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, what? So you ruin it? Oh well, scrape it off, start over, get a new canvas. It's all a learning experience. So don't be too worried. Don't panic. It's just paint. They make more. Okay, so I'm kind of content with where that's going. I might just play with a little bit more of the spring color in these trees so they stand out a little more from that background. And I haven't done the water really yet down there, so I'll get to that here soon. And while I have that color on my brush, I'll play with a little more over here. Oops. Okay. All right, now as this bank here comes down to the water, there's some rocks. I'm just going to suggest some of that with a few little... One thing you don't want to do with your brush is this dab thing. Don't stab at the canvas like that. It looks, it doesn't look like you cared about every brush stroke. So care about every one that you lay down. Because if you put down sloppy brush strokes, that's kind of how people are going to view it too, that you didn't really care about it. So pay attention, make everyone count. If you don't like it, take it and wipe it off. Start over, get a new one. Sometimes it's the value of the paint, sometimes it's just, you know, the color is wrong or whatever. But it's all a problem, a puzzle to solve. And you get to work it out, whatever it is you're painting. Just taking a little bit darker value. I don't want to make this too visually stimulating and interesting back here, but at the same time it has to have something. So I'm just making these actually look like rocks with shadows back here as they come down to the water line, sort of stretch out. Like that. Maybe just a few more darker values. Moving along, I have the sort of sandbanks or whatever, those rock bank sand things coming out into the water, and I want to get those in place before I put the water around them. So I'm just mixing up sort of a sandy color here as they jut out into the river. Okay. Get a little bit more of that ultramarine blue and white. Maybe even some right into that mixture that had the yellow ochre in it, because I've got some water back there. A little linseed oil. Let's see what happens with that. No, go a little darker. Let's take a touch of alizarin into that to make that the slightest bit violet. It's amazing, now we have color. Oh well, it's fun. Keeping my brush strokes horizontal to give the illusion of water. I also want to kind of come back through here and soften some of these edges. I don't want a super sharp contrasty edge right here, because anything that's a sharp edge will convey either flatness, or up close, if it's sharp and crisp, it'll have that feeling of nearness. If I have that going on back there, I'm losing that effect of near and far. So just soften those a little bit, just like that. Okay. Now I'm just taking and sort of meshing that blue-gray into what I already had here. A little bit more white. Again, I really do want to create the illusion of distance, that this is much, much further back, and then I'll play with the color more up front. A little bit of that ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. I want to start to get some of the foundation of this island over here in place. And it's so much gray. I'll come back through and add a little bit more white onto these trees. A little sienna, a little yellow ochre. some more sienna and ochre. It's great to have different areas on your palette that you're using for different passages. You can just jump back in and get them. It's kind of the color I just mixed is pretty much what was on the canvas to begin with. So if I can think ahead and just leave that canvas peeking through, then I'm halfway there. But there it is. So a little more gray, that blue gray, kind of just down here is some of that underbrush stuff. I don't want to lose my beans. Ah! I get going so fast, my hand gets loose. Honestly, in my studio, I think I fling brushes more than anything else. It's full of sand. Okay, back on track. Yeah, so I'm just pulling in some more shadows of these tree trunks before I start pulling in more of the highlights of them. I want to also make this look like it's full of just trees and information and stuff going on. Maybe a little bit more background information over here, because I'm doing this darker passage in here because I want to pull in some of the lighter trees that are in front of it, because I love those. So one of the things that really attracted me to the Rocky River area here in Cleveland are these white colored trees, and my gosh, I should know what they're called, but the bark is almost like a white skin color. So if you're watching and you're from this area and you know what those are, please tell me. As much as I love trees, I'm embarrassed that I can't think of what they're called. They're not, I don't know, I'll just be quiet and paint. So again, here we have the lighter color that I'm just made up a warm gray. And I'm just putting this over the whole thing. They're not, this isn't my highlighted part of the tree trunk yet, but for now it's suggesting the lighter trees. And again, trying to keep those passages softer. One thing that I really just, you don't want to do with your trees is go stripe, 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 stripe. It just looks so bad. If you can gently, even go in small, shorter strokes, horizontal little whatever like that, suggest a few little things, but alter your brush strokes. Just to give you more of that sense of, again, that you cared about every brush stroke, that each one of them mattered to you. And I don't have enough pigment going on here, so grabbing a little more, being a little more aggressive with that. That's yellow ochre and white. Let's hit that stronger. I don't want to go too white because those trees are not birch. We do have some that are showing up, which is why I darkened this passage in here so that the lighter trees will show up more. I'm not worried either too much about losing some of that spring green because I think it's performing its function and doing just fine. I will come back through too and do a little more of the darker trees in this passage as well. And you can get a sharper, smaller, crisper edge by flattening your brush out like this, and then scoop. You've got a little ridge of paint. I feel like Bob Ross. See that little ridge of paint right there? Just a little bit, and then you can get a more delicate line that way. Okay, So, a little more information down here by the creek, or where the river meets the bank. Oh, the water is so pretty over here. Wish I could move the camera. All right, a little bit of darker, just to pull back some of the trees that I said I'd get those darker values in here. A little more. And so far, I've just been using the same brush throughout this whole painting. No reason, just didn't feel the need to switch. Okay, let's get this big one in that I really liked. It's pretty much just dark. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. A little pressure. Drag your brush, twist, dab, twirl, scumble, try different things. I love all the sounds of nature. This is why I love getting out. So beautiful. I'm happy to share it with you all, being out here. I hope that you have a place somewhere where you are that you can still be safe and not be bothering anyone. It's good for the soul. Painting always is. Okay, and a little bit of linseed oil. A little bit of yellow ochre. I'm thinking about the water now, where the water is meeting up with the bank over there. A little more ultramarine blue. Okay, so yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, little sienna. Check it. If you don't like it, keep going. I think there's a duck family. Oh, that's a female cardinal. She's right there. That's better. I think the value could be just a little bit lighter. And to do that, I just added the smallest bit of white. You don't always want to use white to lighten values, but in this case where it was going back in the distance and there was more atmosphere between us and that, I didn't mind adding the little bit of white. It's a female cardinal. She's right there. Oh, pretty. Clean this up. And I can see some of the trees being reflected down in the water. So there's some lighter passages of the cliff. These up in here. Down there. Just some yellow ochre right into that. Straight down. And to do those, I just take my brush and just do little horizontal like that. But it's important that you get some of those in there like that. Hi!
Pretty cool, huh?
Hi!
Can you say hi? She painting? What's she painting? She paint what she sees? Yeah. Pretty cool, huh? So have a nice afternoon.
Thanks, you too! Bye-bye! Sweet. Cute little boy. I used to teach, and I loved teaching children, and so we just started doing our new children's program. And so, very excited about that. People are enjoying it all over the world, and that I spent 15 years developing a children's program, and so it's thrilling to me to see it actually put into lesson form, video lesson form, and workbooks. And so those are finally getting out there, and kids are enjoying them, and I'm hearing feedback. It's phenomenal. Clean my brush out. I guess it's been a while. and then of course you guys know about our 5 free videos. Everybody's stuck at home, and we wanted to offer these. I feel very strongly that art is healing in so many ways, and so I think now is a perfect time to just grab these. They're from the Renaissance Academy, and basic drawing, watercolor, and oil painting landscapes. And then they have the workbooks that go with it, which is different. So I know that I've been doing these YouTube videos for years, but YouTube and Facebook. But what you don't get off these are my workbooks, and I write a lot. There's a lot of content that is free with that special offer. It's just $1 for setup, administration efforts, but that's it. It's just, we're getting feedback from people in, what do we say, 14 different countries all over the world. People are enjoying them. It's very nice to hear. Okay, so that's fine enough for now. Moving across the water. I really do want to get this side of the bank done, especially now the light is doing some cool stuff. So picking a clean brush. I just want to get inside here. I don't want that brush. Nice and dark. So clean ultramarine blue and clean sienna. Oh, give me a nice dark. Really dark. That's as dark as I can get. If I use a little bit more blue than brown, I can make it darker. Okay, and I see this really strong noonday shadows over here. And this whole tree cuts across this way. But see how just by putting that darker passage in here, suddenly this is more forward than that. That value step makes such a big difference. Oh, if you're interested in those 5 free videos or learning more about the children's classes, I can put those links above, below, whatever. I'm excited to do this water too. It's just so beautiful today. And I'm gonna make a little bit more of a violet, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson. I'll take some of this white, just the littlest bit, makes a beautiful purple like this. And I want this in the shadows as they start to come closer to us. Remember, everything closer to you is more color, more contrast, sharper edges, and all that. So this violet in the shadows, to me, makes a little more sense. This is all more muted, so I'm going to get more of the color and variety in here. And I also like the use of that for shadows as it comes down the bank. This. And back to my dark color. Right down here where the cliffs the little bank erosion down here. It's really dark. And this is a size 4 brush. Alright, now since I have it on my brush, I'll just get these rocks too in place. Under the rocks as the water wraps around. Alright, now I'll build this up, starting with kind of the top of this passage in here. Oh, there's 2 geese. Oh, I don't know if you can see them up there. Just sitting right at the top, right where I was just about to start painting. I walked up there earlier to see if I should paint up there, and they scolded me significantly. They did not want me up there, so I thought, I'm not going to get in a fight with the goose, just not today. Let them have their space. Maybe they thought I was going to get within 6 feet or something. I don't know, but, you know, social distancing. So, taking a little non-color, that's that gray-green, and that'll make the bright stuff stand out more. This is more of that soil color, what's under the grass. It sort of cascades down this hill. I also might as well take some of that with the white and the blue, maybe a touch of that purple. When I share this painting later on, you'll see it will be completely reversed from the way you're watching it. A little bit of sunlight on that side of the tree. These are all for sale, by the way. I get asked that quite a bit. I will put them up on my website. The ones that I think make the cut. Let's just say to my plein air page on my website. This is sort of a middle tone shadow gray color just for the sand as it comes down back over here. And I can't get this until I can't do this until I get some of this in place. So you kind of work back and forth with these different passages. I like this gray color, so I'm going to use a little bit more of that down and around here in the wet sand. Big, juicy brush strokes. A little bit more sienna and yellow ochre. Get some more linseed oil in here. You can hear all that traffic in the background. I'm pretty near Cleveland. This is called Rocky River Reservation. It's part of the Emerald Necklace that wraps around Cleveland. And they call it that because the parks are just sort of dotted like a necklace. It's kind of neat. So that's where I'm spending my afternoon. Light's really hitting some of these passages in here, so I'm again trying to work this strong contrast right in here just to get that feeling of light, sunlight. I don't want to go too light though, because the lightest area on this painting is going to be in the water. I really want the eye drawn to this wet water area in here. Pop in some of that green. There's some green on this bank. So a little yellow, maybe a little bit of ultramarine blue. And just dab a little on. As we come closer, I'm going to get some more of that richer green. Little phthalo. I never use phthalo by itself. It's just too stoplight green. That's nice. Rich. And some blue in the shadows. Some moss and stuff. But see how by putting that rich color down here, it draws the viewer, like we have this entrance now. That really pretty color. I'm gonna pull it back in a little bit more intense, back up on this cliff up here where I kind of lost it. Okay. And then under these bushes, it's a little bit darker value, so. And by putting this little bit darker value here, it will make this passage sing just a little more. Okay. Suggest a few more trees in here. Give it some compositional interest. Okay, so that is looking shadowy, I think. Okay, moving on from there down into the water and the rocks. I think I'll go back to my bigger brush. This is a size 6. Right. Ultramarine blue, yellow ochre. I'm going to use this as a base. As I squint down at the water, I'm seeing where I see this basic color in most of the areas. So putting it on, I will go from there and work my way out to more variation. Oh, sorry, but my palette was right in the way. A little bit of linseed oil. I think, yeah, as I'm seeing the water come closer, I see a lot more yellow ochre. So as I start applying more paint down here, I'll be grabbing a little more ochre, a little more as I come along. This way. And I don't mind if some of those brush strokes just stay looking rich and juicy in there. I think that that's really wonderful. I love that feeling. And I've got some of those bright greens reflected down here. So we'll just pull those down. Not too much. Reflections in water are always darker in the water than they are in real life. Than they are what they're representing. They're darker in the water. The difficult challenge to painting water is the fact that it's always moving. Even if you're painting a lake and it appears very still, it sometimes a gentle breeze comes up and ripples the whole surface. So you just have to select. You pick and choose, and then you isolate once you've chosen it. It's like painting a wave moving. You select it, like screenshot with your eye. Just try to save that. I should be fishing. We're talking about doing that this weekend. As far as I know, you can still fish. Getting some of that nice, strong alizarin, or what is that? Yellow ochre. Not even close to alizarin crimson. I am just having way too much fun with this. I hope you're enjoying it too. This yellow ochre is just delightful in the water as I'm seeing it here. A little bit more white, a little more blue. Squinting, squinting, all the time squinting down. Asking yourself, what is it exactly that we're looking at? What's really there? And then I'm going to layer in some of these purple shadows over the top of this for the trees that are coming down like this. At the very end, or near the end, I will do the shines in the water. The ripples down here. Down here around these rocks. Sometimes I think I can hear a fish jump, but I don't see it. Maybe it could just be the way the water's rippling around a rock or something. All right, now over here I've got some beautiful reflections of the rocks in the water. So I'm going to take my time. Maybe switch to a different brush or a smaller brush. But I want to get the water around the back parts behind the rock first. Then I'll paint the rocks, then I'll paint the water around them. Sorry, bug. Little bug on my surface. Okay, rocks. I'm going to just scoop right into this color I already have. Clean, sharp. Try not to overwork your rocks. Think of them as angularly as possible. Give them as many sharp edges as you can. Because if you start getting in there and you fuss with the rocks, they're going to look like potatoes. Or in my case, I always made them look like garbage bags. So try to just keep it, and this is where I like a sharp angled. I do use flats often, but if you use an angled brush, you can get in there and make a nice crisp edge, allowing that chiseled feeling of it being a stone rock. Where are we over here? This guy, big one. Smaller brush, this is that size 4. I'm going to put the reflection of the rocks in the water. And those will stand out a little more as I start to paint the darker around them, the darker water. I kind of jotted down some areas where I wanted those ripply reflections in there. So I'm gonna, if I have to go over the top of them for now, I will. For now, I just want to figure out where my water ripples are going to be in this area. More yellow ochre. Here I've got that reflection down in the water from this. And then I can come back through and put in the highlights a little bit more. All right, so let's get back now to do the highlights in the water. They're very much blue and white, more on the white than the blue. A little linseed oil to thin that out just a little. All right. Now in here I'm looking up at the water down here, right and around this rock. Maybe a little more blue. It's not looking that blue. There's one more thing I want to do on here, if my battery doesn't run down, is I want to show you how to do those squiggly little worms. I call them worms, but they're the lights under the surface of the water that reflects down on the sand. It's a little bit of violet into this. So come over here. And this really does show the movement of the river going this way, and I just love that bluish coming right off the passage over here. Maybe even just take a more stronger blue violet over here. Sometimes the water ripples, the wind ripples the water in just such a way that it has a very blue effect. But I seldom ever just use blue straight out of the tube right onto the canvas, just because it can look a little garish. Let's scoop that. All right, well that'll kind of have to work for that for now, but I'll come back through with this rock maybe just real quick. All right. Well, I think that that's going to have to wrap it up. Oh, I was going to do the little worms under the water. I don't have my teeny brush, but I'll just use this one. Okay, so lighter yellow and white, maybe some of the yellow ochre. And you're going to want to use your linseed oil to thin it. Get my brush off a little. And flatten it like I just did there. You flatten it out, and then just a little ridge like this. Now I'm going to come under here and right under the shines, just with the corner of the brush, you just kind of squiggle it along. You don't need to do very many either, just enough to suggest that under the surface are those highlights. And I don't have a lot of space to do that, but you get it. All right, well, that's going to be it for now. So I'm going to stop here, and I will continue to finish this painting and work on it a little bit more, and then I will share the finished product with you when I'm done. All right, you guys, have a wonderful day. I hope that you guys all get out and paint and stay safe. This was a lot of fun. All right, you guys, bye-bye.